I'm Ma Faiza and I'm an international DJ and I travel around the world and I've been mainly based in India for the last few decades. Well, I think first of all, we could get legally married here, and that was really important. Secondly, as a British citizen, I wanted my wife to have the same citizenship that I have, so that would help us have more freedom in terms of traveling and ease of travel. And also, we would have different possibilities, maybe looking at working more in the UK rather than focusing most of our business in India. That's a really good question, actually. I think it's only starting now that you can create a bank account for your same-sex partner in India, and I think that's been extremely recent, like in the last few months. Otherwise, even creating a bank account together, that was quite challenging. Assets and being able to assign those assets, that seemed to be quite complicated where, for example, if I'm a homeowner in India, that I would have to maybe create a company and then assign, if something happened to me, assign the company's assets to another director, which could be my wife. I think it's actually quite complicated. And I definitely, that was something as being an older person in my relationship with my partner. I'm like 20 years older nearly. That was really important for me, that there would be some kind of legal recognition in terms of our assets and our accountability to each other for our future together. And if something happened to me, I also would want, yeah, I just wanted to have legal recognition of our togetherness and our relationship. We both found that really important. And then secondly, yeah, the money and the assets and what you're entitled to, I think is really important. Otherwise, it's very stacked for one partner or another, you know. So yes, that was challenging in India, and much more equitable, and in the UK, because you either have a civil partnership or a marriage, and then you have equal rights, and that's really important. And I do hope that changes, but that is really, yeah, that if you need to think about everything, and even now we're legally married in the UK, but in India that's not actually recognized. Although, of course, in a one-to-one interaction with anyone, I'm sure even in a hospital, if one of us was in hospital and one of us came and said, "Look, I'm the other one's wife," that definitely moves people on an emotional level. That they're like, "Okay, even though that's not legal here, I totally get it." But actually, when it comes down to legality, maybe they don't have to, because they don't have to recognize it. It's just whether they choose to be a good human being and understand that this is someone that lives with this other person and has married them, even though that's not legally recognized. So you rely on people's humanness and their humanity rather than the law. And you know, if you know, if something happened to my partner, then legally, what am I entitled to in terms of access and making decisions, and that's quite scary actually. I think for anybody, you know. No, you know what? For me, I knew when once we decided we were going to get married, and getting married was only possible. We could have got married in any country, but why? I've got a British passport, and my family is here, and I still come here. It's just that the fact that I'm more based out of India in terms of flying in and out. I tend to spend maybe more time there, but for me, it was like the UK is where we want to get married. We just need to find help, because when I saw the paperwork and saw what was needed, I already, as a very articulate and intelligent person who tries to manage everything by herself, because that's where you learn, I already knew there was just no way that I was going to be able to do this by myself. My partner's paperwork and my paperwork, we're not the best paperwork people, but I could have muddled through. But I was really fearful that I would waste time. I would waste a lot of money because those applications are quite hefty in terms of fees. And also, any issues, they're all government documents, and making sure that you've crossed the T's and dotted the I's is really important. So I already knew that my one goal, the first goal would be to get the best legal advice. And that was my first biggest challenge. How do I find the best legal advice? How do I find some lawyers that know their stuff and that are going to be supportive and encouraging of the fact that we're same-sex couple? Do I look for lawyers in India? Do I look for lawyers in the UK? I was really doubtful. I just didn't know where to start the process. Yeah, I didn't know anybody who could recommend anyone, and I didn't know which city. That was my biggest fear. So for my first beginnings was just going into Google and just typing in UK visa advice, and I did that in local area in London. I did that kind of in a local area in India. And I searched through reviews, I looked at offices, I Googled, I just spent maybe a week just going through, sifting through people's reviews and finding more information about different law firms, and yeah, seeing whether it would be the UK or India. That was really challenging for me. Also, trusting people, trusting somebody to represent you, trusting somebody that you don't know to give you the best legal advice. And that legal advice is really important, because you're filling in documents for the Home Office of different country, for the country, and you're signing, affidavits, and it's all quite scary. And also, finding somebody that would you can trust, and that you don't feel judged. You're sharing your most intimate details. You're sharing your money. You're sharing the story of how you met. You're sharing pictures. You're sharing your time together, and you're trying to understand how you're going to make this process happen and fulfill all the paperwork criteria that's being asked of you. Evidence and proof, and so I think that for me was the biggest challenge. So first of all, I saw a lot of really good reviews on Google. I also checked the office, I checked the location. I think I might have even Googled Falguni. I'm quite kind of exhaustive. I'm not going to waste my time calling people. I found some good reviews, and I actually ended up speaking to Joyce, and she followed up a few times. And then I just took a Zoom call. Lockdown had set in. I would usually have come to Bombay and had a physical face-to-face meeting, so that I could have got a better impression of offices and people, who's at the office. And yeah, I just would have, made myself feel comfortable. Falguni, we had a Zoom call, and from the first moment, she was very warm and she was very patient. She listened to our story. She spoke really well. I liked the fact that she was a UK solicitor, and that she had the knowledge, and yet she was also Indian. So she also had an understanding of how, India works. It wasn't too much one-sided. I like that. She was very warm. After we explained our story, she was very factual. She made us feel very comfortable about us being a same-sex couple, as if it was, oh, you know, no judgments at all, no shock, horror, gasp, like, we just felt very, very safe. We felt very open to just share our story and to share our hopes of this is what we wanted to make happen. And she gave really honest legal advice. She explained the process very briefly, explained what her role would be and how she could make this happen. And I just felt immediately connected, and so did Anuradha, my partner. We were both like, wow, we actually really like her. And I think that's really important. You have to really like the person that you're sharing your whole life with. And also, this is not a one-time journey once you start this process, depending how far you want to go. It's many visas, over up to like a 10-year, a decade of actually working together. So, you've got to take a leap of faith. And, for us, Falguni made all the difference. I felt she was very intelligent and articulate and kind, and she listened and she felt our story and she was actually moved. I really felt her humanness, and I felt like she was intelligent and she knew her stuff. And that was from the first Zoom meeting. And I'm a hard pleaser. The generator, the person that drives, and of course she would be. It's her baby, it's her company, and it's her knowledge. But yeah, her personality and her kindness and her patience and her, genuine sincerity. And you feel immediately a sense of integrity and principledness. And all I wanted was someone to do their best, and with the best, but intelligently, because unfortunately it's hard to trust in India. It's also hard to trust in the UK. You don't know whether you're being ripped off and that you have some junior lawyer who's just attending to your case of 1,000 other cases, and where it's just a money-making machine and no one really cares if it happens for you or not. They're just doing their job. And for me, that was my deepest fear, that I wanted someone to actually care. For me, it was such that I even took the no win, no fee and paid practically double for my visa application, because I was like, no, if we're going to do this, I need a guarantee. And Falguni's contracts do say we do our best. And I was like, nope, I don't want best, I want guarantee. And now, of course, I would never take that service, because actually Falguni doesn't know any other way but to give her best with 100%. And so that's all I needed to know, because I'm that same person. I don't know how to give anything less than my very best. That's my comfort zone, and I can see that's hers. Something that, is what you hope to find, because, having someone represent you, and even when you say that as a lawyer, representation, that means as if they are you and that they have your best interests at heart and that they know what to do for you. Those are big things, and I think people don't take that on board, that actually that's what this level of this relationship is, and it's very intimate, and you have to have faith and you have to have trust, and the other person needs to have integrity and principles and have kindness, and also a professional way of working. Like, it's really, really important. Because for me, I didn't know until I met Falguni that was going to be my decision, although I did check both the UK and India, and I don't know why, but I felt more comfortable to navigate in India, because I think a lot of my paperwork was actually from India. So I felt like somebody there would have more understanding of what I needed to fulfill the criteria and all the evidence that I needed to support my application, or our application. I felt like maybe a lawyer in India would actually have better understanding of challenges I might have, the different limitations on the structure that's there, in maybe understanding things a bit easier, because I think in England maybe there's a little bit disconnect of the realities of what it is to actually live, work in India. And that, you know, people generally are really great, but on paper, how do people look? And that's where the challenge is. We might actually be amazing human beings, but on paper, you know, how do we look on paper? Not that that's important in terms of your humanity, but it's definitely important when you make a visa application or do anything which you're defined by your paperwork and your body of evidence and data. I don't know that. I think challenges, I think in terms of our application, I don't know what, yeah, I mean, yes, okay, of course, we could have just got married in India and then we would have just come on a spouse visa, and my partner wouldn't have had to come to the UK already on a marriage visa if we could have just got married in India. So yes, yes, I think there was definitely some more understanding of how things work in India in terms of for same sex, how challenging it is. So there was definitely, first of all, support emotionally, and secondly, a clear understanding of, you know, why certain things just weren't possible, because it's not recognized. Our relationship is not recognized in any way, shape, or form in India. Well, actually, all my meetings were with Falcone. I very rarely had meetings with assistants, and if they were there, they were on Zoom calls, and they were there, you know, just to give information or share documents or whatever. So actually, Falcone oversaw everything, and I felt Falcone was on the loop for everything. I felt like anytime I needed a question, I could reach out to any of her assistants and they would get back to me via Falcone. So I felt like at every point there wasn't anybody else making decisions. They were just implementing um, things that Falcone had requested them to do. So having that and having access to Falcone at any point was extremely reassuring and valuable. And yeah, I felt like just knowledge wise, you know, everything was just very, very clear. I mean, I just had to put everything together, of course. I mean, having a lawyer there doesn't mean they do all the work. They just let you know what you have to do and what your shortcomings are, and maybe find other strategies or other ways to comply to the conditions and criteria and requirements of your data, you know, and that's where I just needed help, I think. But in the end, you as the client generate everything. If I hadn't been able to supply the data and the evidence and, you know, fulfill all the criteria, it wouldn't have happened anyway. But having that guidance and support and understanding was what really helped this happen, first of all, without any issues or questions after my applications. And secondly, you know, it just took the minimum amount of time. You know, there wasn't time wasted throughout all of this. You know, we were very clear on timelines. We stuck to those timelines. We had clear understanding of all the necessary requirements and how to fulfill all of those. It was very, very structured. But I think as the client, you definitely have to be intelligent and you definitely have to do what's asked of you. And sometimes that can be challenging for people. Yeah, so it's not just having a lawyer who just waves their magic wand and goes, oh yes, your application's ready. It doesn't work like that. You actually do all the work. But, you know, having Falcone and her team just to guide me through all of it, or guide us through all of it, was, you know, was the best thing that we could have. And I know that we submitted a lot more evidence than was really necessary, but that's just to make sure that your visa happens. You know, so I you know, taking pictures every month, taking screenshots of all our conversations and photos and doing that for our whole relationship. That's massive. That's thousands and thousands of bits of information. But gathering all of that, creates as much data as possible to support your relationship, especially being a queer couple. And whilst that might be more than that was necessary, maybe for an application, that just supports the whole body of evidence. And anyway, you have all this data and information which you can use for your entire visa application. So you start to create like a kind of archive of your time together in every possible way, which is also a beautiful thing. You get to see photos and see messages, and every time we have to do that, it's kind of like, oh, that was so lovely. And you get to see your love story again and again and again. But definitely having that structure and having the support was really empowering. I just felt so much stronger. I felt like I could do it. And I think for a lot of people, they're terrified by the paperwork story, especially for the UK. It's quite daunting. I haven't actually had that much experience with working with other firms. I don't know that I have that comparative experience other than hearing other people's stories of their immigration lawyer and how their application failed, or where of course recommend Falguni immediately. I'm like, oh my goodness, you need to speak to the lawyers that we have because they're just fantastic. Other than that, I haven't got a comparison, but I can only say that our applications both went through seemingly effortlessly, although there definitely was a lot of effort from everyone's side. Yeah, I mean, the whole process was just, I was never alone. Not feeling that you have to have the whole burden on your shoulders, because it can seem very daunting, very, very overwhelming, and extremely scary. Yes, I did. I looked at both. I looked at many different, but like I said earlier, I think, the fact that an Indian lawyer would understand more the nuances of actually living in India and some of the challenges that you have, A, for same sex, and B, just generally, paperwork's a bit of a nightmare in India. It's not quite so organized. $1 million loan would have been nice. um, no, I jest. Yeah, definitely the increase in the savings amount, and the demands on fulfilling the evidence, the requirements. I guess that was a little bit easier, but the financial kind of requirements and the changes and the jump, that was definitely really scary. And for a period of time, whilst the government in the UK had their elections, it wasn't known what it was going to change to, which was even more scary, because you're in a process and you don't know what slabs you need to achieve to be able to start the 6 months that you need to show. There's so many criteria, and it's kind of chicken and egg situation. So it was definitely a bit nerve-wracking at a point. But Falguni was so amazing because she always is hopeful. She will never overpromise, but then she will never say it can't happen. She will always say, we're going to make it happen, and have faith, and we'll find a way. So with that, it's kind of like, that's quite powerful in empowering you for yourself, even though I'm not using Falguni's money. I'm still still juggling my own finances, but having that support and having that clarity and being able to say, okay, that's what we need to, that's what you need to have, and how are you going to get that, and showing the provenance of any monies that you have, and how you're going to, that was all. Yeah, there was some support there. I mean, at the end, as the client, it's all on you to bring all the data, and I think that's where I'm sure a lot of people fail, because they either get so overwhelmed by that they they can't continue their application, or that they just can't, they don't have the structure for themselves to be able to prove what they need to in the paperwork. So I think, you know, at some point it is all on you, but having Falgani's support for me was the world, and it made everything happen. I felt like I could do it, and she never ever, even when I made mistakes, because I clearly did, um, even in that, it was never like, wow, that was really stupid, and now you've totally messed everything up, and now it's not happening. It was never like that. It was always like, oh, okay, so now we have to find another way to navigate, you know. Yeah, so we could make it happen, and without her, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be married. And that's really honest. I could not have done this on my own. And I don't know because I didn't find anybody else. I found her, but I wouldn't swap her for the world. And we're going to do all our visas. So that's going to be a 10-year relationship, you know, and that feels really good. We feel like we have someone in our life that we really value, and that has made our lives together really possible in a really positive way.